Welcome to the Inner Space Covent Garden talk. Our talk today is Boost Your Confidence. Which of us hasn't at some point struggled with self-doubt? Very few of us have got by without a blip or a slip in our confidence. Often it's when someone lets the air out of your ego. I know that that's my case for sure. Or when we've received tough feedback, we've made a mistake and we beat ourselves up. We face rejection, experience failure. When your confidence takes a hit, it builds shaky. It builds shaky foundations for self-esteem, relationships, basically everything we do. To boost your confidence, elevate your presence, open up a lot of doors and take a journey. This is what we've asked our speaker to share on. The tips that we need to be able to maneuver through the journey of life. For many years, Rita has been an entrepreneur in the field of management and organizational learning. She's currently the director of the Brahma Kumaris Learning Center for Peace in Boston. Rita's going to be sharing with us for the next 40 minutes or so, and after that, she'll do a short guided meditation. The idea of the meditation is to take key themes and allow them to settle in your mind and your heart so that it's an experience you have. And once you've experienced something, it's easy to check in with it and then use it as a tool in your life. After that, Rita will be taking your questions. Please send in your questions via the chat or the question and answer link, and I will have the pleasure of putting those questions to Rita on your behalf. Rita, welcome. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this wonderful invitation to come and spend a little time with all of you, so that we can chit chat, about this really important aspect of what it means, to have confidence, to have the ability to live life fully and, not to step back when the time comes that we're not quite sure which direction to go in, or we're not quite sure as to what it is that we really need to do in order to move things forward. And as Artie said, I have, I worked for many, many years in the field of management science. But, I think that the main part of this topic, about keeping the confidence while we're in action, it begins, we begin learning that from the time that we're a child. And some of us have had the fortune of being brought up in families where we're really encouraged, how to gain confidence in the various situations that come in front of us, that it's not necessarily mom and dad who's making the decisions all the time, but they teach us how to think through, the alternatives in various situations. And, with their love and acceptance of what we do, they also allow us to make mistakes along the way. And no matter how much, basic training we've had as a child, when we reach adult age, these tests that I call them tests or opportunities that come up, are really unique. And I've come to understand that they happen, in order to help us gain more and more confidence as we move along through life. So, and sometimes, people talk about, that the lack of confidence, the doubt, is because they're really, not perhaps experienced in the situation that's being decided, or that they just feel that they don't have enough um, uh, technical understanding or whatever. But, again, it goes back to really being able to look at the situations that come into our lives as learning opportunities. And I think this is why I ended up even naming the company that I created about 20 some odd years ago as the Learning Circle. And because I realized that there's so much book learning that we can do in life, but then there's a time that we really have to step onto the playing field. And, no matter how much we've studied, no matter what's in the book, we have to go inside and depend and pull forth, our best thinking on these different situations so that we can learn, from these times that create so much stress in our life. So I want to tell you about some of the things um, and I did it for a long time without actually knowing I hadn't thought about what I was doing. And but I used to love walking. And I don't know if any of you are walkers, but if you are, you come to realize, at least I did, that when I was walking, at first I thought it was about physical exercise. And it was indeed about physical exercise. But then what happened is I fell in love with the idea of making sure that I was walking every day. And I see some of you do love walking, which is great. And this walking it's like having a little bit of magic in your life. So, today, like up till today, now, I walk probably about, somewhere between 6,000 and 10,000 steps a day. And I use my phone to track my walking because it's when I'm walking, that I can do my best thinking. The other thing that I can do while I'm walking is to enjoy nature. And when I'm out in nature, um, I become so invigorated, and I'm full of it. Sometimes I'm listening to music when I'm walking and I'm watching nature. Many times I'll go over, there's a place here in Boston, not too far from where I live, called Walden Pond, which many of you may know about with all of the poetry and so forth that was written here with Thoreau and many other well-known poets. So I would go over to Walden Pond, and Walden Pond is a beautiful state property at this time. And when you go down to the water's edge, you can walk all the way around the pond. It's about a 3-mile walk. And, it's in nature. And yes, there's other people that are on the beach enjoying, and some people that are walking. But it really is a place that allows you and allows each one that decides to do this to really go deep inside and to check and see what's going on at that deeper inner space. Um, I call it of the soul, the deepest part of me that I can look at, and I see what's working for me in my life, what's not working in my life. And, I oftentimes think about, if something's not working, what is it, that I can do in order to make things work better. And, I remember I'm sure you all remember back in 2020 when, the Center for Disease Control here, with COVID, they, required masking all the time. And when they put out that direction that each one was to be wearing masks when you're in work or wherever you are with others and so forth, what used to be like a nice little pastime of going out and walking became a survival tool for me, because I could keep the mask on for a certain amount of time. And I realized that, oh my gosh, I feel that I can't breathe fully. And when I'm not breathing fully, that my cognitive ability, I'm not able to think as well. When I was feeling that claustrophobic mask over my mouth, over my face. And so my go-to place at that time would always be, to go to Walden Pond, and in the nice weather, to take my shoes off, put my feet in the sand. And, with that, I could ground myself in a way that my thinking would be, absolutely clear. And you know, during that time of walking, I would purposely, set my mind to task of whatever the things were that I was thinking about in relation not just to my business, because there was a lot of business things that were requiring discernment. I had about 60 consultants that we were working with on a consulting basis, and trying to, discern and decide which consultant would go to which place and this, that, and the other. I was also working with a gentleman who was quite famous in the world of management science. His name was Peter Senge. And he was very, very popular at that time. He had written a book called The Art and Practice of Learning Organizations. And I was managing all of the inquiry that was coming in from all over the world about that. And it turned out that, the time, like in the middle of the day, when things were getting really hectic and there were a lot of different people calling and a lot of different things that were happening, I would use a break. I would take a break and I would go out and I'd walk. I'd walk right in my neighborhood. And during that walk, there were a number of things that happened that were so helpful, to the whole of the situation I would find myself in. So first, I mean, there would be an instant mood booster. Like if I had become too engrossed in trying to quote unquote figure it all out, you know, it would give me the space to find a way to just relax and to feel the answers as opposed to think through the answers. I don't know if that makes if that's clear to you, but I felt that I would become much more creative and proactive in um, in my thinking capacity when in fact I was able, to move into this space of taking off the mask, going outside, breathing deeply, and just, letting the thought process happen in such a natural form. And it was interesting because now at the same time, as Artie mentioned, that I've been a meditator for many, many years. As a matter of fact, it's over 35 years at this point in time. But in some of those days, I was just beginning to meditate and to use the practice of meditation as a tool to help me again become, um, you know, clearer in my aim and objective of what I was trying to accomplish in any given day. So, I would go in summer, when I would go over to the Walden Pond, it would be the beach would be full of children and playing and whatever. And and people would say, how can you possibly go there to think? Well, in watching the kids and watching how joyous and joyful they remained, even when they were bickering with one another, within two seconds they would change and they'd be happy again. I tried very hard to go to find a place that was I could see the children, but not necessarily be involved in their conversation of what they were talking to one another about or things like that. And again, I would find myself to be in a creative mode where solutions would just come so easily and naturally. And I think as a result of that, that experience, I decided to try to find more spaces to go, for things like this. And um, I would drive to the ocean, which was 40 minutes away. I'd go up in the morning after the rush traffic happened, the rush hour traffic, and I'd go and I just watch the waves coming in and going out. And, as simple as it seems in some ways, I felt that being in that space, having the right frame of mind that I would take the time to drive to the ocean. So my attitude was right, that I knew I had a lot to do, but I needed space. So and the outdoors it's always it calls me. It calls me. I want to tell you another story at some point, but I'll add it in a minute. But I would drive when I drove to the ocean and I would sit in front of those waves and feel the breeze and smell the salt water. Again, what I was doing is I was giving myself a gift that would enable me to handle whatever the situations that were coming up. And it didn't matter if it was work or if it was family or if it was just unexpected situations that were happening in life with other dear friends and relatives and so forth going through so much. I would take the space to keep processing and clearing because I don't know if my last name was mentioned, but my last name is Cleary, Rita Cleary. So I said to myself, well, that's not by chance. I guess there's a message in this. I'm supposed to be clearing, clearing the mind, clearing the brain as much as possible. So I continue to try to do that. And then, I was thinking that what we don't understand is that when we, are really going into a space of deep lightness, no matter what happens, you can stay in that space of being calm. And this example that I'm going to share with you, it may sound unbelievable, but it really happened. Well, actually, there's two situations I could tell you about. One was I used to go to India yearly. Up until just a few years ago, I would go every year, and I would visit the Brahma Kumaris center that are there, the Madhaban, which is where the main organization was formed. And this one year, I went and I came back. I was on my way back. I got on the plane, and I had a direct flight on Air India coming back to the United States. And we got probably maybe about 2 or 3 hours into the flight. And what happened was that the whole plane began to shake, and all of a sudden it was going down into the ocean. And at that point in time, people in the airplane were screaming and making noise and whatever, and everybody was sort of in a panic. And what I did was I went into this deep, deep state of stillness. And I can remember saying to myself, well, ready or not, it looks like here I go. Life is not going to exist after this. What's going on here? We were just headed in. And I remember sitting, and if you can imagine, in that moment in time, I said to myself, well, I do wish I had learned to swim. And before you know it, the plane just came right back up. But that was one of the greatest tests for me, to understand that if you have confidence that whatever is happening at any given time in life, it's meant to happen because there's some kind of a hidden benefit in it, which you may not see at that time. I would have never known that I had the power to do what happened in that airplane. I would have never, ever, ever known that that power of stillness, that power of peace, that I had been practicing for so long could give me such strength in the moments of need. So this is why I say that it's really, I feel that it's really important to practice in advance, to be, just like we talk about preparedness in the world today, that, you have to have all kinds of things if the electricity goes out and food stored and emergency preparedness. Well, life at any moment in time, can provide you with an emergency or an unexpected circumstance that you need a resource to pull on, right? And that resource, has to be something that you can't just pull it in that moment in time. It really, truly, has to be something that becomes so practiced. It's like a part of you. It's like the gymnast going to the Olympics, right? When they go with after having put so much practice into their field. But if you broaden the field from something like just one aspect of the Olympics into the field of living life, with a positive attitude, letting go of negativity, and preparing yourself, to develop that ability to think clearly, no matter what, then I mean it is a wonder. It is a wonder. So am I going in the right direction? Is everything okay? Yes? No complaints?
No complaints. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So the other thing, back to this aspect of developing just a simple habit like walking. One of the things that happens is when we have things in life that are causing us distressed, where we lose our happiness and we start to become sorrowful, walking is something that can pull you out of it because it improves your overall health. As I said, it improves your physical, it improves your emotional, it improves every aspect of what's really happening in your life. You need the strength, and once you've got that practice field and you're building that inner strength, that capacity. So when you're walking, what are you doing with your mind? We talked about looking at nature and enjoying nature, but there's also, ways that you can plant the seeds for building strength. For example, I mean, I love this aspect of being peaceful because I feel that's the core of my capacity that enables me to handle everything that comes in front. And so what I used to do is I used to walk and I used to think to myself that I am a peaceful being, that I'm a light being, that I'm a love-filled being. And I used to imagine myself, becoming more and more peaceful the further I would walk. And, I would walk, as I said, at least, 3 to 5 miles a day. And I never really did it with the intention of developing all of these things. But they were the things that happened as a result of having this, this practice of just walking. The other thing that happened along the way was that my ability to meet new people and to build build relationships, and to learn from each one that I met. Because there was one person that I met that had she was a lover of flowers. And I live by a farm stand, if you can picture this. The farm is about a 5-minute walk, maybe 10-minute walk away. And I used to put these two bags on my shoulders, and I'd walk down, and then I'd do my shopping, and I'd walk back. But when this woman ended up joining me, she was I wouldn't say she was a horticulturalist, but she knew a lot about flowers. And when we would get to the farm, there would be a whole field that was on a hill. And on that hill, all of these annual flowers were planted. And when they would bloom, she would say, come, come, come with me, and she would tell me, we weren't picking all the flowers, but she was telling me, she was educating me on what the different flowers were and how long their lifespan was in the summertime and all of this kind of good stuff. So I felt that um, this way of, of being together, having come together, meeting as a result of my walking in the neighborhood, and her joining and taking me into newness that provided learning opportunities, a learning opportunity that was just profound, to learn all of this about the flowers. And so you never know when you're walking, first of all, who you're going to meet. And you never know, what's going to happen next. And there was another time in my life, it's an earlier time in my life, when I had become a bit depressed. And my mother had recently left the body at that time, and I didn't really understand about life and death so much because I was quite young. And right before it happened, I had moved here to Boston with a group of college friends. And when I went home and we went through, all of the uh, ending ceremonies of my mother's life, and then I came back to Boston, I became very sad. And one day, I was walking down by the Charles River, which runs through this, the main part of Boston's on one side and the Cambridge is on the other side, Harvard University on one side, Boston University on the other side. So I was walking but I was feeling really low. And I don't get low easily, but I was really low, probably the lowest point in my life. And all of a sudden, this man who happened to be walking, he noticed that I was probably with tears in my eyes. And what he did is he looked at me and he said, "May I walk with you?" And I looked at him and I said, "Okay." And so he walked with me. And I don't know how long we walked. We walked forever, it seemed. And he would just speak of his life. He would speak of things that went on for him in his life. He would speak of his down points. He would speak of his uh, points when he was in his ascending energy. And by the time that he left, you know, I was really fine. I was really good with all of what um, he had said. He helped me to come out of the negative feelings, the sad feelings that I was having. And he talked about the importance of remaining light in life, and even in times of transition, and it was so beautiful that he would, a complete stranger, you know, just taking the time to walk. And my confidence, in that things were going to be okay came up, from a place of listening to his experiences, that I knew in time that my heart would heal, that I would be a-okay, and not to allow myself to go further down, was my aim when I left him. And sure enough, it made that time easier for me, the remaining time that I was in the grief. Not that I wasn't going to experience it, but recognizing that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, you know? And so all the different types of experiences that helped, in bringing forth my confidence. And what was really interesting for me, at one time, and this was the time when I was working uh, with this group from MIT. They were working actually through my company, but I was meeting them all, and they were all like leading thinkers in the management sciences, and I felt so inferior to them because, I had grown up uh, in a very simple manner with real simple folks, and I had never gone to college, and here I am with all of these people who were starting entrepreneurial companies. I had absolutely um, uh, no, degrees from anything. And I found myself being given opportunities, um, that were unbelievable. And when I would go into them, I would really be doubting myself. When are they going to find out? I really have no idea what I'm doing here. This is, and I can remember one company that I worked for, and again, it was this group of incredible scientists from MIT that I was working with, and it was my first year anniversary in the company. And my boss was going to give me a performance review. And I said to myself, "Oh, this should be good." Because again, I said, "I don't know what's going to happen here." And what happened was when he took me to his office and we sat, and he sits back in this big chair, he puts his arms over me, and he says, "Now, Rita," he said, "where is it that you graduated from?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I didn't." He said, "You didn't?" And I said, "No, I didn't." And he said, "Well, isn't that wonderful? You've learned everything that you know, and you didn't have to go through what we went through with those books, and all of this stuff." And they gave me an incredible increase in my salary. And like, I was shocked. I was just so shocked. I was so amazed. But when we have, I think my confidence there was a bit of innocence mixed in that gave me the confidence to do things I had never done before. But it seemed like every time that I would have the confidence to take a step, as I mentioned earlier, it was like the impossible became possible, that I could do what I needed to do in order to take the next step. And so, to this day in my life, and it's so interesting because now, as a mother, as a grandmother, and with they're not kids, but I was gonna say the kids, uh, in the height of their entrepreneurial days and all starting new businesses and doing different things, I just love watching the fact that they've got the courage, because courage is one thing that you really need to do. You need to trust yourself, and how do we get to trust ourselves? And as I said, I think part of my trust was innocence, that I felt I was still very childlike, and yet what I was trying to master my mind, and that's why I was involved, I became involved in meditation, but I was searching for that kind of mastery all my life. And so when it comes together, that you remain child and you be able to master the mind so you can think clearly, then I feel that, we really have the ability, to be at our best, and to almost like become happy, content, courageous, um, loving, the kindness, and doors like you ever see, there's one of those Star Wars pictures or something that the doors come open. It's like, and then you step through that door, and then this happens. And I have this saying that I use all the time, that when something that's unexpected comes and it's like a little miracle that's happened, I turn around, usually when I'm with someone, I say, "Well, can you believe that? That just happened. Oh my God, it just happened." But for me personally, there's also this love of my spiritual path that has taken me into a place where I feel that I've always, the trust that I have has not always been just in myself. I've always believed that there's some kind of a higher power, that there's a guidance. I don't know if you got that word, but guidance that's leading me in the direction that I need to go in order to be able to play out my part, in this thing called life. So I'm just double checking that I haven't gone over in my time. But I think maybe I could, should I stop now and do a small meditation with you?
That would be lovely. Thank you.
Okay, great. Great. So at this point in time, let's just slow down our thoughts. Turn our attention inward. And ask yourself the question, do I have confidence in all that I do and all that I be? I let my mind relax. And I begin to realize the wonder of living life from that place of confidence. I let go of the fear. And I develop the courage to simply be myself. To see others as those who are also walking a path to their greatness by being themselves. And I remember that in any moment, in just 1 second, with a clear mind and a clean heart, I can feel the direction that I'm meant to take. In my effort to live life fully, to live my life with joy and kindness The only thing I need is to remember that everything is going to be okay. Oh, Shanti.
Rita, thank you so much for leading us through the meditation, but also sharing your tricks and tools with us. They're very personal, but so inspiring and yet accessible for many of us. There have been a few people who've written in of what you spoke about, how you used your time to go walking, all the things that happened for you as you made that time for yourself. The whole idea of being able to feel something, feel an answer, not just think it through. I know that caught my attention, but there are a few questions. So let me start with a couple here. A few people have written about how they're unable to get out and walk. And in the past, they may have used walking for the same reasons that you were talking about, but now physically are unable to do so for various reasons.
Mhm.
And and they're asking if there is any other way to get similar benefits.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry I didn't take that into consideration. But yes, indeed. So one of the things that I have found, on the days that perhaps that I can't walk, I had taken a fall not too long ago, and when there was a couple of months that I couldn't get out to walk. And so what I did is I began to journal. I began to write every day. So just like you would have the practice of going out and walking each day, I had a diary that I kept, and in that, I wrote all of the things that would come into my mind, and then I would explore them more deeply. And again, trying to keep my confidence as I was going as I think as we go through the aging process is one good example of where our confidence is needed, and not never to be afraid of the fact that no one tells you what it's going to be like when you're getting older, right? And anything can happen that changes what you've been able to do for so many years, and then all of a sudden you can't do what you used to do. So finding a way, and if you're not interested in the journaling, if you don't want to go to that deeper level, because that takes you quite deep. I mean, just taking time every day that you're going to enjoy music, or you're going to do something. Find something that brings you joy. And with that joy, the confidence to do a next step in whatever it is that that would be right in your life at this time will happen so naturally.
Thank you. Um, could you, let me rephrase, how would you suggest that someone can find the courage to take that first step that you were referring to?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When I first came to Dadi Janki, I mean to the Brahma Kumaris, Dadi Janki was alive at that time, and I don't know if all of you would know who she is, but she was one of the senior instruments with the Brahma Kumaris when I came in back in 1990. And one of the things that she used to say is, just do it. Say yourself, just do it. Just do it, just do it, just do it. And that will bring you the courage. The other thing, of course, you can always look at others, and see examples of what people have been able to do. And if you have friendship, another thing is to have the friendship. Again, Dottie used to talk about spiritual friendship, that you would be get to know people who are also on a journey of wanting to become the best they can be, and they would need like a guide, not a guide, but someone that they could just chat with, chit chat, have chats with, and build little groups that you have conversations with, and you can become inspired by others who are moving forward. And then you get that courage.
It's amazing, no, that just sometimes talking and being open can just lift you out of a problem solving headspace. It's not that you aren't able to, but it's almost like a conversation shines a light into your headspace and you suddenly see things in a whole different perspective. It's so helpful having
Exactly.
conversations. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Dottie used to call it spiritual friendship. That we all need someone to talk to at some time, So yes, it's a really important thing to have those that you can turn to, that and you can trust, and you can tell them anything and it's not going to go anywhere else. It's just so it's very good.
Yeah, it's a kind of privilege, I think, within the Brahma Kumaris that we all find a little group of people that we can talk to.
Yeah.
And I guess it's partly because it's a group of meditators who have the aim of living life with peace and love and joy and creating that better world. And that even though we are so different as individuals, and some of us are oddballs, I can say that, hand on heart, but that that objective that we kind of have opens doors for us. It really is a gift. Yes, I hadn't thought about it like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, Next question. Could you talk a little bit more about how you dialogue with yourself when you're walking or when you've been journaling and when you have things on your mind, but in order to bring yourself back to confidence?
Yeah. So when I'm uh having a heart to heart with myself, this that's positive, negative, right? Heart to heart with myself. What I do is I first air to myself where I'm feeling. Let me give an example. Um, if I'm feeling that there was something I was supposed to do and I didn't do it well, and I'm feeling that I failed at it because I could have put more effort into it. I could have spent more time on it, and I'm beating myself up, and I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and whatever. And then what I do is I go to this other side of my thinking, where I look at what have I done to resolve a certain situation or to um, is there something I've done in the past that's going to help me to move into um, that place where I'm feeling worthy, trustworthy, trusting myself, uh, giving that value to myself, that I can be honest and clean and clear and see when I have to change something, from a negative to a positive, or see how I could do better in something. And if I owe someone an apology, to be able to give that apology, so all of those little practices, that's how I talk to myself. I really need to do this. I really need to do that. And then I have to have the sovereignty that allows me to complete that, not just say it, not just feel it, but do it.
Mm. It develops self-trust when you can do something like that, see something through. We were just talking about how having someone to talk to that you can trust.
Mm.
Um, what happens if you don't have someone in your life?
Well, there's, for me, I can tell you what I do. I happen to, to have this meditation practice where I do believe in a source, of wisdom that I would connect to in my mind, and I would have a conversation with that source. I mean, it sounds a little corny, but that's actually what I do when things are either so personal that I don't want to talk to anybody else, a living being, about it. But it's like I'm talking, I don't know if I'm talking to my conscience or whatever, but I would consider it to the supreme source of wisdom. And I ask the questions that I need to ask. And eventually, at some point, the answer comes. And I can't put it into words exactly how that happens, but that's what I do when there's no one that I can turn to.
And if somebody doesn't have a faith in God, a higher spirit or a higher calling, or I guess I remember someone saying that they added add a little O between God,
Heard
and they talk to goodness in that sense. Yeah, um, that you just have to open your heart up, I guess. Yeah.
Well, there's actually before I found this spiritual journey, this spiritual path, there was a book that I read, and it was written by a gentleman by the name of Napoleon Hill, and it was called Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. Because a lot of our problems, a lot of the dilemmas that we find ourselves in, as much as we want to shift the burden and blame somebody else, it has to do with the way we're thinking about the situation. And I mean, he teaches ways that you can learn to shift. So, and there's lots of people, that have written books on things like that, but he wrote this book back in the 1930s. And it was for me, an absolutely powerful book that I learned how to develop confidence in myself. And I learned how to shift my own negative feelings about myself, not about just about others, but mainly about myself, so that I could begin trusting myself and trusting that I was going to be able to solve the problem, or something was going to happen when I had a problem, that something would show up that would give me the answer to what I need. But it was never anything that I could just say, I'm going to do this and that will happen. It was like, all of a sudden, just like the man who walked when I was in my dire need with me, he walked until I was okay, and then he left. But how did that happen? you know,
Mm,
but I trust it
yeah.
that
That
something would be okay.
mm, it's an interesting thing. It's a deep belief you have here that things will be okay. It's
Yeah.
a mm,
And when something happens, I say, and it's something I can't believe. I just turn around and I say, well, oh God, that just happened, and then I said, what do I do now? That just happened, and then I just say, well, that just happened. There must be a reason, and try to just hang in there with it. And eventually the answer comes. Next
mm.
step. Yeah.
It's interesting. It's almost like you're open for the answer to come from somewhere. You're not, you haven't narrowed it down to, I have to have the answer in a certain way.
There's a lot of people that don't, I mean, it's sort of like, um, we live in a big universe, and there's all kinds of energies, that help us. Some people who don't believe in any of that at all. They just don't believe that you could possibly just if you just open yourself, as you say, open your heart, open your mind, and somehow just watch what happens, and you'll somehow know, you'll be touched in some way, that what you have to do for a next step. You may not get the whole solution in one, whatever, but as a next step, this is what I need to do. And, so much of it has to do with our own, um, the attitude that we create about life, and the um, understanding that life is being in a school. It's like you're going to school when you're living life. Doesn't matter how young you are or how old you are. There's something new to learn every single day. And it's like that learning that comes to you. You may not even know you don't know what you need to learn, but something will happen to make you learn whatever it is that you need to learn in that given moment in time. And this is why again I say, to have you trust in yourself, know you're going to be okay, and you just have to really trust and ask for the answer. What do I do now?
Mm, mm. Thank you. Thank you. Um, there's been times in our lives where we've done something that's impacted somebody in a situation. And whenever they see us, they'll remember, oh, you were like this.
Yeah.
And it knocks your sense of confidence if it keeps being brought up. How do you keep your confidence that no, you're growing, you're flourishing, despite someone reminding you of your mistakes?
Yeah, well, what I would do, and what I have done actually, is I admit that sometimes I do, I gave you my best answer at that time, or I did what I thought was best, and I'm really sorry because I'm learning at every moment, and maybe I did make mistake, and if I did, I really want to apologize for it. So I would apologize and let my own heart be clean, that I
Mm.
know in that moment in time, I thought what I thought was the right thing to do, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't the right thing, but I'm human and I'm going to make mistakes because all of us make mistakes, and not to be ashamed or afraid of your mistakes, I'll never forget one time there was a matter of fact, it was Maureen from London, talking about how she was apologizing to all of us before she said something. She said, I want to apologize, and I'm probably not going to say this right or do it right. And I said to myself, oh, what a great thing to do. Apologize in advance, because we try our best, but sometimes things are misinterpreted, or we didn't say it in a way that would make it clear enough for people, and so then they come back and they have this feeling that you're not competent, or you're not this, or you're not that. But to me, the only thing I know to do at a time like that is to apologize for any confusion that I caused. And I've been trying to learn in my life, and maybe I'm better now than I was then. So, can I try again?
I like that. Apologize, knowing not not because you're guaranteed to get something wrong, but you may not have got your communication across as well as you'd like. So that's interesting. That is very interesting. It's almost like saying, I know my value. I know what I'm saying is valuable, but I may not get that across as I'd like. I really like that. Thank you. Thank you. Which leads to actually the final question here. How do you cultivate a sense of self-value and feel your own worth?
Yeah. Well, that's a big one. That's really a big one, because I think that um, many, many people do not see their own specialty, their own self-worth, and that at our deepest level, not that we would go talking about it to anyone, but we just don't feel we're either smart enough or strong enough or whatever. And, what we have to recognize is that we all come into the world, um, with hearts that are full of love and peace and happiness. As babies, you don't find many babies that are angry. You don't find, many babies that are not loving, and just look at you and they make your heart melt, right? So I think recognizing that life experiences can sometimes lead us with a distorted view of the self, thinking that we're not good enough, because many things happen along the way. Many, many things happen along the way. We're doing it sometimes to ourselves, that we're comparing ourselves to others. We're not recognizing our specialty. And one thing that I was taught, because I was very insecure as a young woman, a young child, young woman, And one of the things that I was taught is that every one of us have some specialty that we can offer the world. And when we become givers instead of takers in life, when we give good feelings and good wishes to others, and we see that the other is someone just like us who's struggling to find a way to love themselves for who they are and what they're doing, then there's a way that we begin to see the self as one who is worthy, and that who has a right. We have a birthright, to come in and to make the best of our life. But we have to recognize that that takes effort. It takes time to cultivate, kindness and generosity. And the more that you give, the more you get in return. It just is a natural law, that you give. And I mean, I can remember at one time in my life, I wanted to learn, I really wanted to learn about death. And then I said, well, maybe what I could do is I could help those that are in a space that they're in hospice now and they're dying, and maybe I could learn something that way. And when I went and I gave and I met with those people, I I could never measure um, the gratitude that I have for what they taught me. Because, in my uh, about worthiness, about how each one of us is so worthy, because we're all one big family who are trying to make the best of ourselves and to make a better world. And some have to endure a lot more hardships than others, but it doesn't matter. The worthiness of all is equal.
Wow. Now that's quite a note to end on. Thank you. You've somehow kept the whole topic so light and left us feeling like, yeah, it's possible, not an issue. And yet you've taken us into such depth. So,
Right.
Rita, thank you so, so much for making time and joining us and sharing your insights.